Hey, this is Troy from Planet 76. We've got some really good Sixers focused content coming your way today. Make sure you subscribe to the pod so you can be in the know when we release new content. Enjoy the show. All right, what's going on, Sixers fans? Welcome to another episode of Planet 76. This is episode 172. First time in a while, Mike and I are together for an episode, so this is going to be fun. At least that's one word for it as to what we're about to get into, putting things in perspective a little bit for this 21 and 39 Philadelphia 76ers who have just struggled immensely, for lack of a better way of saying it. There's just been a lot that's gone on. Obviously, since we last recorded, Joel Embiid is officially shut down for the season with that knee injury. Was injured all season long, as we know, if you followed the Sixers any amount, if you followed us any amount. Um, and when he did play, he struggled to show that he was healthy, even though he played well at times. You could just tell something was bothering him. But anyway, Sixers struggling. Episode 172. Embiid is done for the season. There's plenty of stuff to get into. But I'm going to toss it to my partner Michael over here and see what he would like to dive into for this one because it's been a roller coaster of a season, but it's been one of those roller coasters where there's lots of downs and not as many climbs up the hill. So, Michael, what do you got?
Yeah, it's been a while, man. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. As
Good.
good as I'm gonna
It's
get,
good.
considering this current state of the Sixers.
Um, yeah, I mean, this is definitely the longest we've gone without recording. I know Troy's been keeping up with things a little bit, which I'm very grateful for. I forgot to say that to him, but thanks for doing that. This is Troy and I's first time in at least a few months recording together, and in that time, a lot's happened in Sixers land, and Troy alluded to some of it. I personally haven't watched the Sixers as much as I've liked this year. I recently started working for 97.5 Fanatic. For those of you who are in with sports radio and that kind of thing, I just started working there just a few weeks ago, but it's taken up a decent chunk of my time. And that's definitely played into me not watching the Sixers as much as I would like, although I'm still definitely in the know with things. And what you'll notice as you're a fan for a while, and Troy can attest to this as well, this is essentially our fourth year doing this podcast, is that there's a lot of similar themes throughout the years with the Sixers. When things aren't going well, fingers get pointed to one or two guys usually. There's usually one or two main suspected culprits that people point their fingers at as to what's going on with the Sixers. Why are they losing? Why do they stink? Why are they on a losing streak? Whatever the case may be. And most often, it's Joel Embiid. Now, this is probably the only year where I can say, you know what? He does have something to do with the Sixers' woes.
hmm
However, not for the reason that many people say is because, oh, he can't stay healthy. He's not available. Well, he has been available. It's just that he hasn't been able to really play the way that we know him to be able to play. And a lot of that is because of the lingering knee injury that he suffered last February. Can you believe it's been a year? I can't. A lot of people don't understand that it's not necessarily Joel Embiid's fault because even though he could have, should have, would have, maybe had to get the procedure done over the summer instead of playing the Olympics, that's a whole other
hmm
conversation. Maybe we can go there later in the show if you want to. But the whole idea that it's Embiid's fault because he didn't get the surgery is really backwards in my opinion because he didn't get the surgery because he felt like he would have been he felt like he was going to be okay to play and he felt like he was going to be okay to be available for the team to try and help them win games. And to me, that's the ultimate mark of a true competitor and a true winner because you will do anything to help
hmm
your team, your group win.
Yeah,
And
I mean
Joel
that's
Embiid
that's
has,
Joel. Yeah.
yes, exactly. Joel Embiid has done that for years upon years. This is not the first year he's put his body on the line to try and help the Sixers win. Years and years and years, every single year in the playoffs, unfortunately, he's dealt with varying degree of injury, and he's put his body on the line every single time. He's played, even though he maybe shouldn't have played multiple times. There's multiple times he's played when he maybe shouldn't have played. He is no stranger to putting his body on the line for the sake of the victory. And if there's one thing that you can't say about Embiid, it's that he's soft. It's that he doesn't care. It's that he doesn't want to be here because he wouldn't, year in and year out, put his body on the line to try and help the Sixers win. And it's unfortunate that he hasn't been able to do that this year because the injuries have just been too much. The knee has just been too much. He hasn't been able to fully overcome the knee injury and play the way we've seen him play on injuries before because we've seen him beat play 80%, 85%
Hmm.
on a lingering injury. It's just a lot different this time around. For what reason, I don't know.
Hmm.
However, we've got some information that it's just a very severe injury and it's something that he's going to need serious medical intervention to resolve. And that's not a good sign. And again, we can end the show as well. But it's just been a really weird season, and I
Hmm.
think I made a post about it. This has been a season. This has probably been the worst season for the Sixers, probably since 2016. That's how long I've been watching the team. Probably since then. I can't really. I mean, we've had so much success with this team.
Yeah.
Obviously, no championship, but there's been so much success to look at and say, wow, we've had it really good in this organization. We've had it really good in this Sixers community for almost a decade.
Yeah.
So,
I was gonna bring that up. Yeah.
unfortunately, the good, apparently, I guess for the Sixers, the good can only last for so long. So it's been a weird year, and there's a lot to discuss still. And Troy and I are gonna try and kick it back up a notch here and ramp things up a bit as we head towards a very early off season for the Sixers.
Yeah, a little earlier than we are used to or expect. And it's funny because I was going to bring that up. That was going to be my next kind of talking point was in regard to what we're used to as Sixers fans and very well said on your part. From one of the newest members over at 97.5. I've been wanting to say that for a few weeks now. So
Cheers.
um, because I've had a couple conversations with some non-Sixers fans recently. Obviously, the Joel Embiid news comes out last week, and a couple of my friends were like, "Hey, how you feel about Joel?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's crazy. It's been a weird, wild year that like it's kind of par for the course as to what it's the season has come down to." And I said similar to what you just said, like this has been the most disappointing season for sure for the Sixers even beyond 2016. Like we're talking, when the Sixers were really bad, winning 10 games, 20 games, whatever. This is worse than those years for the sheer fact that like those years they were bad, they were supposed to be bad. Right? Like there's a huge difference in the expectations of those teams and the expectations that the Sixers had this season, which was, you go and you acquire Paul George and you retool your roster a little bit. Like this was a team with championship aspirations. And from the get-go this season, it was pretty clear that that wasn't going to happen. We talked early in the season about a lot. Okay, let's just get healthy. Let's just get healthy. Let's just get healthy. Let's make the playoffs. I don't know how many times we said it on this podcast this year, even if this team's just healthy in the playoffs, we'll take it. And obviously, it is official. This team will not be healthy in the playoffs because Joel Embiid will not be there. Sixers might not make the playoffs. Um, so yeah, this has just been a really, really disappointing season. And if you want to, I just any thoughts on that? Like, am I right in answering my friends that way and saying that like just because of the expectations, this is that disappointing of a year?
Yeah, I think I would agree with that for the most part. And that's something that I talked about on my page recently too, is there was so many great things to look forward to this upcoming season with Paul George, with Maxey taking another leap, with
Hmm.
what we saw from Jared McCain very early on, with the depth the Sixers were able to retain this offseason. Everything was shaping up to be perhaps what I thought was gonna be one of the best seasons in Sixers history, one of the best seasons the organization has ever seen, the fan base has ever seen, simply because of the talent that this roster had and the coaching and the way that everything came together last July with Paul George
Hmm.
getting Andre Drummond back. with I guess I would say the emergence of Gershon Yabusele, and everything just looked so good. Everything
Yeah.
was looking great. And like you said, and I want to echo that point too, the Sixers really for a while, I'd say probably up until February hit, still had a chance to make the playoffs, which for as crazy of a November, December, January that they had,
Yeah.
was still a possibility up until perhaps the trade deadline in February, almost a month ago at this point. So it's just unfortunate the way things ended up. Definitely a bit of a murky few months that we're in for, I would say, or at
Hmm.
least that we're in right now, to be honest with you. But at least there's some good, and I know it's hard for Sixers fans to see the good, especially in times like these, unprecedented circumstances like these. There's good to look forward to, and again, the off season is early this year, so we're going to be talking about a lot of this very early this time around.
Hmm.
Much earlier than we'd like to, like Troy just said, and much earlier than we're accustomed to.
Yeah.
So that's all coming soon, I guess you could say. And yeah, overall, I'd say, yeah, I'd agree with that. Totally.
Yeah, and you did bring up a couple. I mean, Jared McCain, holy cow, like
Yeah.
he was amazing at the beginning of the year. Amazing, far better than any of us could have ever
Hmm.
even thought. Gershon as well, like he's been very, very good, very reliable, maybe the most consistent, reliable, whatever you want to say for the Sixers. Maxi's had some struggles lately dealing with a thumb injury. He went down hard today on his back. I think we play tomorrow in Minnesota, so he probably
Hmm.
won't go. It's funny too, like I just realized this, we're, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes into this, and we haven't even talked about the Sixers game tonight against Portland because like I don't want to say who cares, but like who cares? Like,
I mean,
and
who
that's the history of this
cares? Let's
podcast,
just,
171 episodes. We would, always break down Sixers
yeah.
games and like, nope, there's not really a need to because there's so much else to talk about and going on. And I did have a interesting stat I saw on Joel today that I wanted to read to you. I just saw it an hour ago. It says, in a season when Joel Embiid was visibly injured and barely able to run, he was still fifth in the NBA in scoring per 100 possessions. Just a preposterous offensive machine. And that is so true. Uh, Speak to that because I have a feeling, knowing you, you want to. Are people hating on Joel Embiid right now a little bit? Or
Yeah.
to speak to that, like in not just the fact that he's trying, but the fact that he's still somehow producing on one leg and he gets a lot of hate and people want him to be traded and people want this and he can't stay healthy. And I have a feeling you want to rant about that a little bit.
Yeah. I think I think since we're gonna have an early off season this year, I don't think we've ever actually had. Maybe we have. I mean, it's 171 episodes in. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe we have, but we should have a full on Joel Embiid tribute episode
Hmm.
because I feel as though, well, I don't feel, I know that none of that exists. There's nothing you can look to online or on social media where it's just Joel Embiid discussed in an extremely positive manner because nowadays, no matter what he does, it's not enough. And if he does too much, he's a moron. He shouldn't have done that.
Hmm.
And I'm sure, I mean, you've probably seen, I know you're pretty active on Instagram and Twitter and things like that. So I'm sure you've seen a lot
Yeah.
of it, but a lot of it is people, one, forgetting how good Embiid is because, like I mentioned earlier a few minutes ago, he hasn't been fully. We haven't seen Joel Embiid fully healthy since at most the Olympics, but at least since last February when he was initially injured. Because he looked
Right.
pretty good in the Olympics from what I remember. It could be just my cloudiness, but I do remember him being and looking good in the Olympics. So at least since the Olympics, or I'm sorry, at minimum since the Olympics, but at
Yeah.
least since last February. People have forgotten how good he is, and that stat, I would say, in some ways speaks volumes to how good he is because although we sort of per 100 possessions,
Per 100 possessions, fifth in the NBA.
although the NBA is 75 possessions, see, one game, whatever. But although it's a bit of an outside stat that not many people pay attention to, the fact that he still is, and we know this, he's one of the greatest scorers ever. And
Yeah.
even though we haven't had that sample size of his playoff scoring, something that all of the great scorers have a very great sample of, we know that what we've seen from him in the playoffs, yes, because he's had multiple 50-point games in the playoffs now, we've seen, we understand that he is one of the greatest scorers ever. Perhaps a lot better in the regular season, yes, for reasons that I don't want to get into right now, but he's one of the greatest scorers ever. And something like this speaks volumes to that. And I think when a lot of people who've recently just gotten into the Sixers haven't been able to see Joel at his peak
Hmm.
because even though he's technically at his peak right now, he's just not healthy, so he
Yeah.
can't showcase that ability. But back in his MVP season, the season before, the season after, I guess that was
Last year would
technically
have been after.
last
Yeah.
year. That 3 year span, we were looking at legitimately the best player in the NBA. I mean,
Hmm.
outside of perhaps Nikola Jokic, we were looking at the best player in the NBA for a
Yeah.
multi-season time span. And so many people are going to have missed out on that. One, because they were too busy hating. Two, because they weren't actually watching the game. Three, because maybe they weren't really watching the Sixers. And unfortunately, and I've said this for actually multiple years in a row now, Joel Embiid is going to go down as one of the most underappreciated stars in the history of perhaps sports,
Hmm.
not just basketball, but sports, because he's a guy who had so much of his career taken away by injury. And the difference between the player he is when he's playing and the player he is when he's hurt, it's just night and day. A totally different player. And it's really unfortunate because if you know, you know. And I don't want to get into the specifics of what makes him so amazingly good. If you're a Sixers fan, you understand this. And if you really watch Joel Embiid, you know what makes him so good. And I think a lot of Sixers fans' true colors were shown this year, saying they should trade him.
Hmm.
They shouldn't have given him the extension. He should retire. I mean, these are all really insane things to say, really insane sentiments to have. One, because no matter what the case was, you give Joel Embiid the contract. I don't know that there's a world where you could have justified not giving him the contract.
Hmm.
Okay, the injury was real. The injury concerns were real. Apparently, he went right to Josh Harris about the injury. Apparently, Daryl Morey sort of pushed Josh Harris to sign the extension. But how do you not give him I'm sorry. How do you not give him the extension?
Right.
You don't. You can't not give him the extension. It's just not something that you do. I don't care if he was playing on one leg. It's organizational give Joel Embiid an extension like that. Yes, it was a lot of money, but what do you do otherwise? You let
Hmm.
him walk in a couple years, and get nothing for at very least if he, I'm not saying I'm not saying that this is what they should do, but at the very least they have him under contract. They can trade him.
Yeah.
If they decide to go down that road, they have the option. But when you don't re-sign him, you're letting him walk for nothing. So
Right.
I don't understand the mentality behind that. He he's not going to retire, and they're not going to trade him.
Right.
Trading Embiid, and this is something I've said again. And this will be my last point. Trading Embiid does nothing for you right now as an organization because let's say you trade Embiid this offseason. His value is at an all-time low for starters. Who wants Joel Embiid and what are you going to get for him? You're not going to get ample value. You're not going to get what he's worth. Why are you why are you selling yourself short? Why are you selling Joel Embiid short? You're trading him for scraps? No, 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 no. I don't care how injured he is. You wait until his value is corrected, until the market's been corrected for him. And then if you want to trade him, okay, maybe explore that. In
Hmm.
my opinion, there's no reason to trade Embiid unless he explicitly asks for a trade, or if they find that it's best for the organization. Otherwise, there's no reason to trade him.
Yeah.
Right now, you trade him, you get nothing for him. Again, you're stuck in no man's land because next year, okay, the Sixers, let's just say best case scenario, they draft Cooper Flag. Boom. How that's not a good team. You're looking at the same exact team right now, except perhaps a few more wins.
Yeah.
That doesn't do anything for anybody. You're sending yourself into another full-fledged rebuild. At least this year, it's sort of a retooling
Yeah.
because you're gonna get a high draft pick, hopefully, at this point. This year, it's sort of a retool. You trade Embiid, you're sending yourself into another dark age process era, and I
Yeah.
don't think that helps anybody.
I think so too. I mean, you just don't trade him. You don't. And
No.
there's lots of rumors, lots of things, lots of ideas that people have based on, the current Joel situation, which just don't really line up with what you want to do. Injuries happen. Have they happened a lot to Joel? Yes.
Yes.
Um, but it's better to take a chance on Joel versus take a chance on some sort of draft return that you could get, or picks or a couple pieces that you really don't know how that could shake out. I still think it's better to take a chance on Joel because when he's healthy and even when he's just a little banged up, he's still extremely productive, right? This year it just happened to be that he wasn't just a little banged up. It was something that he could not continue to play through, and so the Sixers and Joel decide to shut it down for the season. Um, I think what I'm you didn't know I was going to go here next, and I really don't want you or a listener to misunderstand what I'm going to say here. Because you just mentioned, Sixers are going to have a high draft pick and, that kind of thing. And um, not that I'm saying that Sixers are going to do anything this year at all.
Yeah.
Not at all what I'm saying. But the hilarious thing of this is that the Sixers, who just dropped nine straight, they since have ended that streak after Quentin Grimes went off in the win against Golden State, which, they have as many wins as the Philadelphia Eagles do in the last month with that. But even through that, they lost like no ground in the chase for this play-in because the Chicago Bulls lost like seven in a row themselves. So Sixers go on a nine-game losing streak and lose no ground in the chance of making a play-in, which is I find just hilarious because it's easier to catch a team that also kind of sucks versus like catching a team that's at the top of the Eastern Conference that doesn't lose. Anyway, they're like, as we speak right now on March 3rd, they're like 3 games back of the 10 seed, 2.5, 3 games back of the 10 seed in the Eastern Conference. Michael, question. Would you rather, I hate the word tank, but would you rather tank, get like as good of a pick as you can get in the lottery, or at least salvage something of this season? And because like you and I both, if Sixers make the plan, win or go home. Like that's gonna be fun to watch. I don't care how bad the Sixers have been this season. I would enjoy something of the season that I can get excited to watch a Sixers game. I had the game on tonight, wasn't excited at all.
No.
You're in the play-in, there's something to root for. That's me. I don't know where you
I
stand on that.
I think Troy and I usually are super in alignment with the Sixers and things of that nature. This is one of the few times where I really disagree with Troy. I just
Just done.
it
You're
w-
done.
it I not not that I'm done. It's just that at this point, even if they make the play-in, that's not something that I would find enjoyable because even though it's more Sixers basketball,
Right.
it's just delaying the inevitable, which is a nearly 6 month long off season, which I guess isn't too much further, too much more than we're used to, but still definitely more than we're used to. So at that point, I'd say you have a chance at the top six protected pick. Take the chance and see
Yeah.
if you can see if you can end up with the pick. I know there's some stipulations where the Sixers may end up having an impact on where they land in the draft. So I say go for the pick. I say try. I don't want
Capture
to
the
say
flag.
try and yeah yeah. I don't want to say try and lose because
Yeah.
that's kind of shameless. But I I think they should go for the pick. I think they should do what they can to try and get that pick. I've never said a word to him. I've seen him in person though. I think Daryl Morey really wants that pick.
Mm,
If I was Daryl Morey, I would want that pick, and I'm
yeah.
obviously not, and I'm not sure I want to be having his job is a lot of pressure. If I was Daryl Morey, I want that pick. I want that pick almost as much as I want Embiid to win a championship because you're looking at a top three, four draft pick, which obviously there's a huge discrepancy between Cooper Flag and then whoever goes number two, whether it's
hmm
Ace Bailey or Dylan Harper, whatever.
hmm
Huge discrepancy. But even if you land one of those three guys, I mean, we're talking a serious, a seriously good player who can contribute right away.
Yeah.
And we're talking about another possible Jared McCain situation, but even better,
Right.
where it's a guy who you get and you could just pop him in the lineup. No development. Well, I mean, I should say hardly any real development because there's these players at the top of the draft this year are super polished. So I say go for the pick at this point, and I know a lot of Sixers fans would agree with me on that for sure.
Oh, they would. And I get
They
that
would.
perspective. I absolutely get it. I think part of me, like even in what I kind of alluded to at the end of my uh reasoning is just it's almost selfish for myself of like I just want something fun to look forward to of like
Yeah.
basketball being played versus hoping for something that's going to come in June, something immediate and quick and
Yeah.
it again, you and I both um it'd be you go to the play-in, you somehow win, and then you go get smacked by the Cavs in 4 or 5. Uh, oh well, like I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
But I will say this: I do think, again, maybe this is the optimistic side of me. I think with Joel Embiid officially out, like everyone knew it was kind of coming. He was back and forth, in and out, in and out. With him officially shut down, I think it does help some of the other guys kind of just play free or play with the knowledge of that being the truth. We see what Andre Drummond did tonight. Monster double-double, his best game as a Sixer certainly this year.
Mhm.
And some other guys that have opportunities to step up. Obviously, Maxi's got to be healthy. Paul George has got to be healthy. But like this is still if Joel Embiid didn't play at all this year, this team is better than their record indicates on paper. They just are because of Maxey and
I'd
Paul
agree with that.
George
Yeah.
and the way Gershon's played and obviously Jared McCain would have helped, but I think they're better than they are on paper and or better on paper than they are as their record shows. And so I don't know. I just think
Hmm.
there's
Okay.
potential of like something fun to end the season. Now it's not going to be fun again when they make the play in, and you're going to be asking me, "Hey, was that worth it?" Now we don't get that pick, and I'll be like, "Yeah, you're right. I wish we would have." But just something to think about there. Any other kind of closing remarks? Anything else you want to talk about? I mean, we just mentioned Paul George. He has not been a fan favorite for a lot of
No.
Sixers fans. I don't know how much of that you think is warranted or not. Nick Nurse obviously catching flack. When you lose, a lot of guys are going to catch heat, and that's what we see right now with the Sixers. So your thoughts on any of that that's going on?
I think particularly with Nick Nurse, people think that good coaches are supposed to just magically turn bad players into superstars. And that's not really how it works. Because if you're a coach of a team with bad players, there's nothing you can do that will make those players turn into good players. So there's no amount of speeches you can make, there's no words you can say, there's no motivation that you can give them that will make them turn into good basketball players. If you're coaching a bad team, you're coaching a bad team that's not going to win many games. So when Nick Nurse is out there playing Justin Edwards, Adem Bona, Jeff Doughton, who are again, they're fine NBA players, but that's not a team that is going to win you a lot of games. It's not going to be a very good team.
Yeah,
So so no good coach should be greater in his ability to turn bad players into good players. That's not how coaching works. If you're a talented player, it's going to be easy for a coach to get you to that point. But if you're just not good,
yeah.
what is how is a coach supposed to turn a bad player into a good player? It's there's only so much coaches can do to the point where like, okay, it's the player's job now, it's their turn. And we saw a lot of that this year. So the whole Nick Nurse should be fired thing is weird and
Yeah,
it's not something that really makes a lot of sense because even though he did have some questionable rotations this year, I'm really not sure that warrants him being fired. So I really seriously doubt he's fired this offseason. I would actually be shocked,
yeah,
honestly,
I
if he
would
was
too.
fired this offseason.
I would too. I think that, to that point, a lot of people are reaching for the sheer fact that it's like if you're not following the Sixers on a regular basis and you just know the big headline news that Joel's been out a lot, missed a lot of games, and now he's officially ruled out,
Mm.
it's all like, okay, well, why couldn't Nick Nurse win without Joel Embiid? Joel Embiid is not the only thing that's been stacked against
Right.
Nick Nurse. Think about all the other
Right.
injuries. I mean, everybody's missed significant amount of time. And
Yeah.
it's been a different, crazy, weird lineup out there every single night, and Nick
Hmm.
Nurse is having to deal with that. Like it's not just Joel Embiid. And
Right.
that brings me to another kind of question or point as we close the season with the last 20 games or whatever. How much of that are we going to see? Like, is this team going to be healthy? Are there going to be guys sitting out even though they're not really hurt? Are there going to be more injuries? We know there are some currently, but like how much of that is going to play into the discussion that we've already had about, are you really trying to push for the play-in or are you really not trying to do that? And how much of that will we be able to tell or see just from who's on the court and who's not as fans and, kind of the reasoning for them not being on the floor is going to be something to watch down the stretch. Whew, what an episode. Episode 172. Um, I don't know what to say.
I feel like I feel like even though we just talked about so much, there's so much to talk about with this team. And unfortunately, maybe it's kind of a good thing that they've been losing games. They've been bringing all these new guys in, Lonnie Walker, Quentin
Yeah.
Grimes, Jalen Hood-Schifino, Jared Butler at the trade deadline, that you're able to see some new guys, some new faces. Quentin Grimes, like you mentioned, 44 points. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't I haven't, up until he got here, I wasn't watching much of him to be honest. I know he was good. I know he was a very solid role player,
Hmm.
but I didn't know he was capable of dropping 44 points. It speaks magnitudes to how good NBA players are nowadays. Anyway, yeah,
That's
it's
true.
just weird because for as bad as the Sixers have been, there's a lot to talk about, and it's weird when they're winning. Sometimes there's not a lot to talk about because it's just that they're winning, everything's looking good. But when they're bad, and when they're in this case almost probably historically bad
Yeah.
for their franchise,
Yeah.
there's a lot to talk about because there's it's a revolving door of
Yes.
contracts and players. David Roddy was on a two-way deal, which, funny enough, the Sixers actually drafted him almost 3 years ago. They traded Danny Green in their first round pick of the
Hmm.
2022 draft for D'Anthony
Right.
Melton. That pick was actually David Roddy. So really weird
Hmm.
that happened. And he was playing for the Bluecoats, and he had like 30 points on 8 threes or something insane like that. So really weird stuff this season. Just a
Yeah.
weird, weird season. Weird season. But it's almost over, and then we can get into
It
some
has
off
been
season.
weird and it's almost over, but it's not over yet. And so like who knows what's coming next
Yeah.
and what kind of parody and weird things gonna happen. And
Yeah.
but I do think even if you're, kind of in the camp of like, well, there's not really any point to watch these next 20 games. Like there are some
Hmm.
things to keep an eye on, and as you mentioned, some players to keep an eye on, like Quentin Grimes. He's been fun.
Hmm.
That's been cool, and to see how things shake out and keep an eye on the standings, either the conference standings or the standings for the NBA draft, whatever camp you're in, and
Yeah.
we'll see how that shakes out.
Yeah.
So, all right, episode 172 is in the books. Just like the Sixer season is almost in the books. We will see you next time on Planet 76. You just listened to an episode of the Planet 76 podcast. Hey, we appreciate you joining us for this episode. Whatever platform you're on, why don't you hit that subscribe button for us, and we'll see you next time.